Once upon a time, in a cozy little village called Sunpetal Valley, there lived a cheerful girl named Lily Rose. Lily had big sparkling brown eyes, 2 bouncy pigtails tied with yellow ribbons, and a smile so wide it could make even grumpy old Mr. Grumble next door smile back, even if only a little bit. Lily lived in the most wonderful pink house on Buttercup Lane. It had a bright red door, round windows that looked like big friendly eyes, and a garden full of sunflowers, strawberries, and her favorite, purple lavender that smelled like a dream. Every morning, Lily would skip outside and water every single plant, singing her own made-up songs about butterflies and rainbows. But one dark autumn evening, something terrible happened. The sky turned the color of old bruises, purple and grey and angry. The wind picked up speed, howling like a hungry wolf. The trees in the garden bent and swayed. Lily pressed her nose against her window and watched, wide-eyed. "It's just a little storm," she told her stuffed bunny, Carrot. "It'll pass. It always does." But this was no ordinary storm. This was the Great Autumn Whopper, the biggest, most powerful storm Sunpetal Valley had seen in 100 years. Thunder cracked like a giant clapping his hands. Lightning flashed and zigzagged across the sky like a scribbling pencil. Then, crack, boom, crash. A huge old oak tree at the edge of the garden, which had stood for over 200 years, could no longer hold on. The wind ripped it right out of the ground. With a tremendous thud, it crashed down, straight onto Lily's little pink house. The roof cracked in two. 3 windows shattered. The chimney tumbled. The garden wall crumbled into a pile of broken bricks. And the front door, poor red door, fell completely off its hinges and landed in the mud with a sad splat. Lily sat in the corner of her living room, hugging Carrot tightly. The rain was now dripping through the broken roof and making puddles on her colorful rug. She wasn't hurt, thankfully. But her house was a total, absolute, positively heartbreaking mess. "Oh, Carrot," she whispered with tears in her eyes, "what are we going to do?" She had no idea that outside, deep in the forest at the edge of the valley, a pair of enormous golden eyes had just opened wide, and a very unusual neighbor had just heard the crash. Light bulb. Fun fact, Lily named her stuffed bunny Carrot because she found it on the same day she first grew a real carrot in her garden. In the whispering pine forest that circled Sunpetal Valley like a big green hug, there lived a dragon. Not a scary, fire-breathing, treasure-stealing kind of dragon. Oh no. This dragon was quite different. His name was Drago, and he was enormous, as tall as 3 school buses stacked on top of each other, but he had the kindest heart you could ever imagine. His scales were the color of fresh leaves, bright green with little speckles of gold that caught the sunlight like tiny stars. His wings were turquoise blue, and his eyes were warm golden amber, like honey held up to the light. Drago had one great passion in life, fixing things. He had giant toolboxes he had built himself, filled with enormous hammers, massive wrenches, huge rolls of rope, and stacks of timber. He had repaired the bridge over Clover Creek when it collapsed. He had fixed the roof of the old schoolhouse when a snowstorm punched a hole in it. He had even reattached the weather vane on top of the town hall tower when a particularly rude gust of wind had knocked it off. The only problem with Drago was that he was rather clumsy. His tail knocked things over. His wings bumped into trees. His enormous feet left crater-sized footprints in soft ground. He once accidentally sat on Farmer Ted's tractor and squished it completely flat. He felt very bad about that and built Farmer Ted a new one, which was even better. It had cup holders. On the stormy night when Lily's house was destroyed, Drago had been deep in his forest cave, carefully painting tiny little flowers on a birdhouse he was making for his bird friend, Pip the Sparrow. He was using the smallest brush he owned, which was still about the size of a mop. He heard the great crack of the oak tree. He heard the crash. And he sat up so fast he bonked his head on the cave ceiling. Clonk, sending rocks raining down. "Oh bother," he said, rubbing his head. Then he sniffed the air. Someone needs help. Drago had a special skill that no one could quite explain. He could smell when something needed repairing. It smelled like cold rain and with splinters and sadness, all mixed together. And right now, that smell was coming from Buttercup Lane. He grabbed his enormous toolbox, tucked his paintbrush behind his ear. He always forgot he did that, and crashed through the forest. Branches snapped. Pine cones flew in every direction. An owl named Professor Hoot shouted, "Watch where you're going." But Drago was already gone, stomping through the valley in the dark and the rain. When he arrived at Lily's garden, or what was left of it, He stopped and stared. The house looked like it had been sat on by a giant, which was actually not so different from what Drago had once done to that tractor. He saw a small light in the window, a candle, and the shadow of a little girl, sitting very still, hugging something. Drago's golden eyes softened. "Don't worry," he whispered to himself, picking up his toolbox. "Drago is here. Drago will fix it." He knocked on what remained of the wall. 3 bricks fell off. Oops. Lily heard the knock. Then she heard the bricks fall. Then she heard a very large voice say a very sheepish oops. She peeked out of the broken window and screamed. Then she looked more carefully. The dragon outside wasn't roaring or snarling. He was standing with his toolbox under one arm, his paintbrush tucked behind one ear, rain dripping off his big green nose, looking thoroughly embarrassed about the 3 bricks. "Terribly sorry about those," he said, pointing at them. "I'll fix those first, I promise." Lily blinked. She opened the half of a door that was still standing. "Who are you?" she asked. "I'm Drago," said the dragon, giving a little bow that caused his toolbox to swing and knock over the garden gate. "Very sorry about the gate too. And, oh, and your flower pot. I'll fix those as well." Lily looked at the enormous dragon, at the enormous toolbox, at the enormous trail of accidental destruction behind him, and, very bravely, very surprisingly, she giggled. "You're not very good at arriving places, are you?" she said. Drago blinked. Then he smiled, a big toothy dragon smile, and shook his head. "No," he admitted. "But I'm very good at fixing things once I'm there." And so, standing in the rain at the edge of her broken house, Lily Rose and Drago the dragon had their very first conversation. Lily told him about the oak tree and the storm and how the house had belonged to her grandmother and was the most precious thing in the whole world to her. Drago listened with his enormous head tilted and his golden eyes full of attention. When she finished, he set down his toolbox with a thud that rattled the remaining windows, pulled out a small notebook, which looked hilarious in his giant clawed hand, and said, "Right then. I will need to repair the roof, replace 3 windows, rebuild the chimney, rehang the front door, repair the garden wall, clear away the fallen tree, and replant the lavender. Also fix the gate, the flower pot, and those 3 bricks I knocked over just now." He looked up from the notebook. "I promise you, Lily Rose, when I am done, your house will be even better than it was before. That is the Drago Dragon Repair Guarantee." He stuck out one enormous green claw. Lily looked at it. It was as big as her whole body. Carefully, she wrapped both of her hands around just one of his claws and shook it. "Deal," she said. "But I'm going to help." Drago blinked again. Nobody had ever offered to help him before. "You'd want to help? Really?" "Of course," said Lily, already putting on her little raincoat. "It's my house, isn't it? Now come on, let's start with the roof." And with that, the most unusual repair team in the history of Sun Petal Valley got to work. The very next morning, the sun came back out, shy and apologetic after the storm, peeking through soft white clouds. And so the great repair adventure began. Drago had spent the night, carefully, very carefully, clearing away the fallen oak tree. He had carried it to the edge of the forest in 3 trips, only knocking over 7 fence posts and 1 mailbox along the way. He had already fixed 4 of the fence posts by morning. The mailbox was next on the list. On the first day, they worked on the roof. Drago could lift the biggest beams of timber as easily as Lily could lift a pencil. But measuring things was a challenge. His claws kept slipping on the measuring tape. "It says 12 feet. Lily called up from below. "Are you sure?" Drago squinted at the tape. "It looks like it says either 12 or 22. These eyes are not always the best at numbers." "Definitely 12. Put it here. No, here. No, wait. Left a bit. Stop." Clunk. The beam landed in exactly the right place. "I did it." Drago gasped. "We did it." Lily cheered, jumping up and down. By lunchtime, Drago's fire breath turned out to be extremely useful for something nobody had expected: heating up the tar to seal the roof tiles. He could breathe the exact right temperature, like a very precise oven. Lily discovered this by accident when she was eating her cheese sandwich nearby, and it came out perfectly toasted. "Dragon toasted cheese," she declared. "The best kind." On the second day, they tackled the windows. Drago had fetched beautiful new glass from a village glazier, only breaking 2 lampposts on the way home. The windows had to be cut to exactly the right size, and this was where things got tricky. Dragon claws and delicate glass are not the friendliest combination. Drago snapped 2 pieces in half before they found the solution. Lily did all the delicate cutting and measuring, and Drago held the frames perfectly still while she worked. His enormous steady hands turned out to be perfect for that one job. By evening, 3 new windows sparkled in the pink walls. Lily had chosen ones with little diamond shapes at the top, fancier than the old ones. Drago smiled so wide when she pointed this out that his teeth glimmered in the setting sun. Day 3, the chimney. Drago stacked bricks with impressive speed. Unfortunately, he also accidentally sneezed halfway through, and knocked the whole thing down again with his tail. He stared at the pile of bricks, then at Lily. "We don't talk about that," he said very seriously. "Absolutely not," Lily agreed, hiding her smile. They rebuilt it. It was straighter than before. Day 4, the front door. This was Lily's favorite day. Drago had found a carpenter in the village who had a perfectly beautiful piece of cherry wood, deep red and smooth as silk. Between Drago's strength and Lily's careful painting, they hung a new door more glorious than the old one. Lily painted climbing roses and little yellow bees on it, and above the door, in her neatest handwriting, "Cherry Blossom Lily's house. All friends welcome Cherry Blossom." Drago read it and got something in both his eyes at once. He insisted it was dust. On day 5 came Lily's most important task of all, the garden. The garden wall had crumbled completely. The sunflowers had been flattened. The strawberry beds were a muddy mess. And worst of all, the lavender, her grandmother's lavender, the very heart of the garden, had been crushed under bricks and lay wilting and pale. Lily knelt beside the lavender and was very quiet for a long time. Drago watched her from a respectful distance, his golden eyes soft with understanding. "My grandma planted these," Lily said quietly. "She said lavender means I will always love you. She planted them the day I was born." Drago said nothing for a moment. Then, very gently, he reached into his toolbox, past the enormous hammers and wrenches, and pulled out a small cloth pouch. He held it out to Lily. "I was keeping these," he said, "from the garden of an old cottage I repaired 2 summers ago. The family had moved away, and they said I could take the seeds. I never knew why I kept them." Lily opened the pouch. Inside were seeds, small, dark, oval seeds with a sweet, familiar smell. Lavender seeds. Lily looked up at Drago with enormous eyes. "You kept them for 2 years. I told you, I didn't know why." Drago shrugged his enormous shoulders, looking a little pink under his green scales. "Perhaps I knew someone would need them someday." Together, they replanted the garden. Drago proved surprisingly excellent at this. His claws could dig deep trenches in moments, and he was extraordinarily gentle when handling tiny plants and seedlings. Lily planted each seed with her own hands, whispering something to each one that she didn't tell Drago, though he suspected it involved her grandmother. They rebuilt the garden wall together, brick by careful brick. Then Lily had an idea. "Let's paint the wall," she said. "Dragonfire and paintbrushes. We could paint a mural." Drago looked alarmed. "I'm not very good at." "You painted that birdhouse perfectly." "That was different. I used a small." "Here's a big brush. Paint." Drago took the brush. He took a very deep breath. He painted. What appeared on the wall was absolutely magnificent, a sweeping scene of Sunpetal Valley, with the forest and the mountains and the little pink house at the center, and 2 figures beside it, a small girl and a large dragon, side by side. Lily stared at it with her mouth open. "Drago, that's beautiful." "I was nervous," he admitted, putting down the brush. Everything was going perfectly. The house looked almost completely repaired. One last job remained, the chimney cap, the topmost stone, which Drago needed to climb up and set in place himself. He climbed. The house wobbled slightly under his weight. He set the stone in place. Perfect. He turned to call down to Lily. His tail swung around in excitement. The chimney pot, the brand new one, went flying through the air. It landed in old Mr. Grumble's garden next door with an extraordinary crash, causing Mr. Grumble to shoot out of his front door in his pajamas and slippers, shouting things that were not very polite at all. Drago froze on the roof, looking absolutely mortified. "I'll add it to the list," he said mournfully. You always say that, said Lily, laughing so hard she had to sit down. I always mean it, said Drago. On the morning of the 6th day, Lily woke up and walked outside into her garden. She stopped. She put both hands over her mouth. Her eyes filled with happy tears. The house was magnificent. The roof was perfectly tiled, solid and strong. The 3 new windows with their little diamond tops sparkled in the morning light. The chimney stood arrow straight, including its repaired cap, and Mr. Grumble's garden had been fully tidied, and Drago had even planted him some tomatoes, which had cheered the old man up considerably. The beautiful cherry wood door with its painted roses and bees gleamed warmly. The garden wall was rebuilt and decorated with the most wonderful mural Lily had ever seen. And the garden. Oh, the garden. Fresh soil, new plants carefully set in perfect rows. The sunflowers stood tall and proud. The strawberries already had tiny green fruit beginning. And there, along the sunniest part of the wall, in little neat rows, the lavender seeds, tucked warmly into the earth, just beginning their long, patient journey to bloom. Drago was sitting in the garden, impossibly large, nursing a fresh cup of tea. He had a pot the size of a bathtub, with the paintbrush still behind his ear. He looked up when Lily came out and gave his wide, toothy, warm smile. Well, he said. Drago Dragon Repair Guarantee. As promised. Lily walked the length of the garden slowly, touching the new wall, the new door, the little lavender seeds in their row. She stopped in front of Drago. It's not just as good as before, she said. It's better. It's more beautiful. It's more mine than ever. Drago's golden eyes were bright and warm. That, he said, is always the goal. Lily sat down on the garden bench, and for a while they both just looked at the house together, the girl and the enormous green dragon, as the morning sun climbed higher and the birds started to sing. Drago, said Lily, after a while, where will you go now? Drago thought about this. He looked at his toolbox. He looked at his list, nearly all crossed off. He looked at his little notebook. He looked at the painting on the garden wall, with the 2 figures side by side. Well, he said carefully, there's the matter of old Mr. Grumble's fence that I accidentally sat on in the dark on night 2. And the bridge over Clover Creek could use new railings. And I believe the schoolhouse needs its gutters cleaned. I mean, interrupted Lily, smiling, would you want to come back? To visit? Drago looked at the door, all friends welcome. He looked at Lily, who was looking up at him with her big sparkling eyes, Carrot the bunny under one arm. His enormous tail, that troublesome tail, swished back and forth, thwacking gently against the garden wall. Happy, wagging, like the tail of a very large, very green, very fond dog. I think, said Drago quietly, that I might come back quite often. Good, said Lily, because I have a long list of little things that need fixing. And also, I make excellent dragon toasted sandwiches. Drago laughed, a big, warm, rolling laugh that rustled the sunflowers and made Pip the sparrow tumble right off his branch in surprise. And so began the most unexpected, most wonderful friendship in all of Sun Petal Valley, the girl with the pigtails and her big green dragon. Every week, Drago would visit. Every week, something new would be fixed, a wobbly shelf, a creaky step, a leaky tap. And every week, without fail, something else would be accidentally knocked over, broken, or sat on, and then fixed again, even better than before. And the lavender. That spring, it bloomed, row after row of soft purple flowers, filling the garden with the sweetest smell in the world. Lily stood among them and thought of her grandmother, and smiled. Next to her, Drago sneezed, a tiny sneeze for a dragon, enormous for anything else, and accidentally blew a dozen lavender blossoms into the air like a purple snow shower. Sorry, he said. I love it, said Lily. And above Sun Petal Valley, the sky was the most perfect blue, and somewhere up high, a rainbow had appeared, just because it could, just because it wanted to, just because it was that kind of day.